So this is the first convening of the light novel book club, then,
Yep, this is the
or
first
it's
convening of
in another world with my book club. We have to decide right now. We've been stewing on this for 2 weeks.
Didn't I say to make my book club average in the next life?
I don't think. Okay, if we're gonna name ourselves off a particular light novel, I do not think that this is the one to do it. Because
Oh,
I had issues with this one.
oh, you had issues
I
with
had
it.
issues.
I won't say I
I've
thought
got
it was perfect
I've
either.
I've got some beef with this story by FUNA.
Okay.
But for those of you listening in, this is the Light Novel Book Club, doing business as In Another World with my book club. We'll figure out exactly what our title
We'll
is.
iron it out later.
Yeah, no. Well,
So, what book did we read?
all right, so we read Didn't I Say to Make My Abilities Average in the Next Life, Volume 1, a story by FUNA. I don't think that's that person's real name.
I don't think so either.
And it's illustrated by Itsuki Akata. So, Patty, why don't you briefly summarize this for us? Let's do introductions. Who are you?
I'm Patty, also known as Homesick Snail. This is probably going to be on my channel, so.
Right, and I'm Brandon, otherwise known as the Onion Man of Greece. No, I am not from Greece. Yes, I am an onion.
That is true.
Jury is still out on being a man. All right, so again, we read Didn't I Say to Make My Abilities Average in the Next Life. Patty, what is this story?
Okay, so if you couldn't tell, this one's an isekai. Big shocker. So girl dies. I think her name's Masato.
Well, that's one of my beefs.
Is that she keeps changing her name?
The main character throughout the course of the story has 4 names, and she drops all the old ones each when it changes. And there is at one point in the story where she does not even note to you as the reader that the name has changed. It just does.
I see. I feel a deep personal connection with that because I change my name on League of Legends about every other month.
Right. But, you have and forever will be Patty. It's on your birth certificate. That's what your name is. Patty.
Legally, yes.
Yes, Patty. Exactly spelled out that way. 2 T's and a Y.
But you don't like, okay, so girl dies, Truck-kun, praise be his name, comes along.
They say that Monty Python movies and shorts, they always have God in them. Well, if it's an isekai, we must always have Truck-kun.
Of course. So Truck-kun comes and kills Masato, or whatever her name was, and she is transported to an afterlife where God tells her that she did such a bang-up job saving that little kid from Truck-kun that he is going to give her a wish and basically send her to a backwater world.
Yeah, just classic swords and sorcery fantasy setting. You've played Final Fantasy. You know how this works.
Well, except there's nanomachines.
Right. So that's one of my other big beats with this thing is that God shows up and says, "Hey, I'm God. You did great. By the way, not actually God. You can call me God. I have God abilities, not God." Here's my question. How is the plot improved in any way by the God, not God distinction?
It's not.
Right. So why even have this as a feature of the story?
Because it's so cliche for him to be God. He's not God.
Yeah, no. So see, that was my big thing, because there's this whole, so one of the classic bits of fantasy that I always like is something inexplicable happens, you just call it magic. There's a lot of people out there who are really upset about that. I don't know why. And they, decide to force magic and fantasy into classic science fiction tropes. Something inexplicable happens in fantasy, it's magic. Something inexplicable happens in science fiction. We have to make up science to explain it, but it's science. So I never have understood the need for the explanation.
And in this case, the explanation is nanomachines.
Lots of nanomachines.
So nanomachines inhabit this new world that I think her second name is Adele. Adele is now living in as a little girl. So she gets killed. She goes to this new world, and she becomes the kid of a viscount, I think. So she says to God that she does not want any super overpowered gifts in her next life. She wants to be average because she was so smart and good looking in her old life. She could not make friends.
And she can fly
and
has
super speed and laser
eyes.
But she says to God that she wants to be average. So she's just a normal little girl until the age of 11, where she gets all her memories back from her old world. And then after a while, she realizes, yes, she is completely average. if you took the power level of the most powerful thing in the whole world and cut that in half, she is the average of that guy. She is the average.
Yeah, no, I actually do like that scene when she's talking to God, who is definitely not God, but you might as well just call him God. She says she wants to be the average, and he goes, what do you mean? I want to be a totally average person. I want to be average for everything in that next world. Okay, we can do that. See,
and he just does not get it.
The wording that she uses is very clever, I feel, on the part of the author. She doesn't say she wants to be an average humorist. She wants to be average for the next world. So that's why we have this division of the Elder God, with the Elder Dragon, where she's half of that power.
So she is average to that Elder Dragon, but to everyone else, she is just stupid overpowered.
Right, because humans are trash in any isekai setting, as is the standard rule,
as they should be.
Mm-hmm. All right, so so she goes into this next world. She has her average abilities, goes to school.
Of course, because there can't be an anime without school.
Right. It's dirt poor. She's being
she was a noble, which I would also point out, she was the daughter of, I believe, a viscount, which in the nobility standings, right in the middle. Dead average.
But actually one above average, but there's the little twist in there in that this particular father, the viscount, is trying to disinherit her. So she's not allowed to use the family name, doesn't get any resources, has to go to the not best school.
The second best, but not the best.
There's 2 schools. She gets to go to the bad one.
Wait. Do you remember what the academy was called?
I sure can find out.
Because I thought it was funny, because I think it was called, like, Echlend.
Yeah, it was. It was Echlend Academy.
That just tickled me.
Anyways, so this is one of my big beefs that I have with this particular novel, in that the first half of the story, which is girl goes to school, hides her identity, makes 3 female friends who she teaches magic to, and makes 1 boy swordsman rival, repeats itself halfway through the story. So we spend the first 150 pages of this 300-page novel establishing the setup, which is girl with average abilities goes to a new place, pretends not to be herself, makes 3 female magic friends, and 1 male rival who uses a sword. And then halfway through the story, we abandon this to then go to a new school, in which he makes 3 magic-wielding friends, and 1 rival who is a boy who uses a sword.
One of the friends uses a sword, and not magic.
Right, but I don't understand that about this particular novel. Why does it repeat itself?
I don't understand. See, that's what I also feel, is that the author is... Because I will admit, I enjoy this book, I enjoy the characters around it, so I am actually on the 4th volume of this series. And I feel like the author is spreading themselves too thin, trying to have this... The author brings back the old characters. They're still there. They're still in the academy. But then there's also the Crimson Vow doing their own things. And I'm like, I assume you're going to intersect this at some points, but it feels like you're just... going off in too many different directions.
It's very strange. It's a light novel, so it's meant to just go on forever ad infinitum.
I believe the current this was originally a web novel. And I believe the web novel is on chapter 334 or something.
That would make sense. Maybe it's like one of those write a chapter a day sort of challenges.
Something like that.
But given the fact that, the point of a light novel is that it will eventually reach critical mass and go infinite in terms of its story without ever achieving any real resolution, why do we repeat the same arc twice?
It's in the same book.
And the same book. In the first book, we do the same arc twice.
Yes.
It's very strange to my thinking. Anyways, we're getting ahead of ourselves. So she goes to the school, becomes a part-time baker. At one point, she's just, having a jolly good time walking down the road.
And then
sees a kid about to get run over by the prince.
The carriage of the princess is coming through. And some stupid-ass kid, once again, gets in front of the road, and she's like, oh god, no. Truck-kun is right around the corner, I can feel it.
Right. It's we've repeated now, not only...
But I feel like that one's intentional.
The repetition even goes more infinite. Saves a kid from getting run over, goes to school... This is then repeated by saving a kid from getting run over and going to a new school. How many children need to nearly die in order for us to progress the plot?
How much blood must be on your hands, FUNA?
So anyway, she's decides to save the kid. Very reasonably, the reaction of everyone in the vicinity to her saving a child in the road is both children must now be executed.
They must die.
They must die. So she decides to therefore do a bit of magic. Again, her magic level is absurdly high, so she does something that is...
So she's just like, well... So she uses a barrier that everyone's like, what the fuck is this? What's happening?
She makes a wall of light.
And then she's like, well, in for a penny, in for a pound.
Right. So she decides to double down. So this is the only bit of the book that I actually liked, was this one scene.
Was there she doubled down?
She doubles down and she declares, I am the reincarnation of God, and I am possessing this 12-year-old. Do not let her on any condition know that I have possessed her. Bow down to me and give me all of your money. They buy it.
And they're just like,
I love this. Yeah. This is such a classic Dungeons and Dragons kind of mood.
Just pulling it right out of your ass.
This is what I live for. Just go big.
Or go home.
Go home. She does go home. She goes home immediately after.
She goes home immediately after and says, oh shit. Because then she realizes, okay, everyone's going to know about this. No one's going to not tell anyone. Everyone's going to tell everyone. And my dad's going to come and just kill me.
Right. So, the plot progresses on. She goes to the new school by way of becoming a hunter.
Oh, and also she changes her name now.
She changes the name again.
She's now known as Mile.
Mile.
And as far as I've read, that is what she has kept that name.
Oh, okay. So she stays Mile. All right. She goes and becomes a hunter. We can't call them adventurers because other people call them adventurers. Therefore, they must be hunters.
They are hunters in this one.
Uh-huh.
Oh, good hunter.
Don't worry, there's a hunters guild in which you go and grab tasks based on a ranking system defined by letters. So.
And, of course, you gain experience from doing those tasks.
Mm-hmm. So it is in every way classic JRPG trope number 179.
They have to force a leveled system into this for some reason.
That's right.
Just like every isekai.
Must be there. Sometimes they just have an actual level system.
This time they decided to use letters.
That's
really mix it up.
That's another thought that I have with this, is that she's trying very hard to have the exact same tropes of every other isekai and fantasy JRPG novel ever. And she is going exorbitant lengths to have it not be the trope. But it's still the trope. Right, no, so it's still a leveling system, it's still an adventurer's guild, it's still magic, but instead we're calling them hunters guilds, we're calling them class rankings, and we're calling them nanomachines.
By the way, no one else in this world knows that they're nanomachines. They actually all think it is just poof magic.
Yeah, it is just poof magic.
Mile is the only one that knows it's nanomachines.
So you're allowed to do all this in my mind if eventually there's a payoff. So the question is, will there ever be a big payoff to the nanomachines?
She does talk to the nanomachines.
Right. But let's go with, other classic isekai tropes, such as, the time I was reincarnated as a slime. Or rather than,
talks to the sage. Which is basically the exact same thing, just talking to the admin.
Right. So, will the nanomachines ever at any point pay off in this light novel? Is there
I could
big
not
build
say.
Up?
I kind of hope so, that something interesting happins with these nanomachines.
I don't know. What were your overall thoughts on this book, Patty?
Obviously, like I said, I liked the book because I'm currently on the 4th volume. Plot, I agree with everything you've said about the plot. Bone dry, just straight shooting, nothing different about it. What I really like is the characters.
Okay,
that is the thing that actually kept me reading. Was I like the Crimson Vow.
You like the Crimson Vow.
I like these 4 characters that they've put in.
The replacement. I wonder, so you said that this is a web novel.
It is originally a web novel, yes.
So I wonder, because this is, a living text. Uh-huh. It was book read as written. I wonder if it was just that fans didn't like the original cast of 3, and that's why 150 pages in, or roughly 10 chapters, we replaced them entirely.
They do come back. They're still out there. They're actually still looking for Mile.
Okay, so what appeals?
So I actually I like Mile. I like her character. I like she is just completely naive about the world in general. Also, just female character in Isekai is in and of itself a breath of fresh air instead of OP male character surrounded by a harem.
No more Kirito.
No more Kirito.
Well, she is surrounded by a harem.
Yeah, they're just friends though.
Sure. Will they stay just friends though?
God, I hope not.
Oh yeah, no, I'm sure you don't. So let's go into the Crimson Vow then.
Okay, so there's Mile, obviously the main character. Pauline, the healer slash sadist. Reina, who is basically just Megumin. And,
she is just explosion
Mavis,
lolly.
The best character because she is a Bishonen knight.
Who looks surprisingly like Saber in this one piece of art.
Man, who would have thought?
Wow, popular.
That paladin-like tomboys would appeal to me.
It's very true. I think they're all right. I feel like Pauline and Reina really don't have
they
much of a personality. They just have a shtick.
I feel like Paulina has a little more. I'm saying this because I've read further ahead, that I have more understanding of a character. But I do kind of agree that Reina is still kind of getting shafted on the personality department, where she basically is just a tsundere.
Yeah, we have, that's, when you're talking about characters, you can either have flat or round. And then you can have, dynamic characters, and dynamic characters change throughout the course of the story. I'm thinking Pauline and Reina are probably going to just be these flat tropes. They're going to be, comic relief characters, they're going to be supported, and it's really going to be Mile and Mavis who end up carrying this forward. Now, obviously, you've read ahead, so you can tell me how horrifically wrong I am.
I'm not going to say you're horrifically wrong, but they do delve more into their backstory. There's a little bit more going on with these two, especially, I would say, with Pauline. Like, they both have pretty tragic backstories.
Oh, I'm sure. You can't have, people who have happy lives don't grow up to be adventurers.
That is absolutely true. Of course, your parents must be dead.
Parents must be dead. If you show me a D&D rogue who has their parents, I'll show you a fish this big.
I've never heard anyone say that.
Really? It's you don't hang out a lot with a lot of fishermen, do you?
But like I said, what's carrying it for me is the characters. I like their little interactions. Like I said, I really like Mile, how she is just like, she is competent, but she lacks any kind of common sense.
Yeah. So here's my thought. I sort of wonder about the overall writing of this book and sort of its quality. And it really makes me think, what's the difference? Really, as I was reading this particular passage, it's about 13 lines long. It's about 2.5 paragraphs. It really makes me sort of think about what the difference between writing a light novel is and writing, say, a Western young adult's novel, such as Aragon. So I'm going to read you this scene verbatim. I want you to, after I read it, just tell me what you think is going on. All right. Slash! Smack! Now me! My turn! You guys! Pauline and Reina hunted the goblins gleefully while Vale shied away. He wasn't surprised by Reina's ferocity as much as he wished he could be. However, among their classmates, Pauline was known as a meek and mild-mannered magic user, specializing in healing and recovery. Amongst so many boisterous young women in their class, she was a breath of fresh air, a precious commodity. Not unlike Mile, or so she had been. Dance water droplets into a raging boil! Grah! Die! Miles collapsed onto a fallen tree in shock at Pauline's outburst, while Mavis slumped forward as if her very soul had left her body. It's
sounds like a little classic goblin murder.
Goblin murder, classic.
And Pauline is getting a little too into it.
Right. But sort of my thought is, we don't actually get any description of what's actually happening in this scene. It is grand total of 3 voiced lines and 2 reactions. Pauline's reaction to killing the goblins, and then Miles' reaction and Mavis's reaction to Pauline. But we never actually get an exact picture of what it is that's happening. We can infer, because she's screaming, dance water, dance, boil, die, gah.
And there's some goblins somewhere.
Goblins is mentioned once. We never actually see the goblins. We don't know what she's doing to the goblins. I've been rereading The Inheritance Cycle over the last few weeks.
Never heard of it.
Aragon is the first book.
I didn't know that's even what it was called.
Oh, well, that's what they are.
I've read Aragon.
That's the series, and there's a very similar scene in Aragon, the first book in the Inheritance Cycle, in which he's killing two orcs. They're called Urgles, but they're orcs. Rather than sort of just describe reactions, they go into very deep depth about his feelings. They describe the environments. There's this beautiful imagery about drawing back the bow. You don't really get that in a light novel. It's something I've noticed reading through these. Yeah, you sort of get character moments. So I'm curious, what do you think, apart from the fact it's made to just be written infinitely, makes a light novel different in terms of the writing process as opposed to a standard Western fantasy?
I don't think usually they think about like the actual plot. They're just like, all right, here are my characters. Mm-hmm. I've thought out these characters. They're gonna do something. And they're just like, next week they're gonna do a bandit camp. They're gonna, go fight some goblins. They're gonna. Mm-hmm. They don't have the plot really thought out. Like they might think to themselves, later on down the line, oh, they'll do this thing. That'll be cool. I might get them there eventually. But it's more just usually about the book, the one book.
Right.
The one book, they have a little adventure, and then next week they'll do something else. It is more. This I feel is just Japanese media in general. They're just thinking more about the characters interacting and a little less about the plot.
Yeah, so I guess sort of my question then, does light novel as a genre add, meaningful, thought-provoking substance? Can a light novel have, will a light novel stick with you? Will it change, your perception of the world? Will it teach you something?
Yes. This one, no.
No. Gotcha.
Is it fun to read? Yes. Will it change my life? Absolutely not.
It's very much, it's excellent popcorn, but it is popcorn. And
it's just fun to Mile just does like, all right, you know what, fuck it, superpowers, boom.
Right. So that's one of my big quests for this particular project that we're doing is I really want to figure out what makes it a light novel, why it's different. Whether it's good that it's different, whether it's bad. I just want to know more.
I feel it is, like you said, a lot of it is a lot of popcorn. They're short. This one's actually long at about, 320-ish pages?
Double space, size 14
That's
font.
long for a light novel.
It is.
It is meant to, every couple months, new volume comes out, you read it, wow, that was a little fun time I had with these characters I like.
So
it is not... especially this one is not meant to be anything deep or meaningful.
So, Patty, let me ask you a question. It's a light novel.
Uh-huh.
In addition to being, just gonna be written infinitely forever. Big thing about light novels, they have a lot of art in them.
They do have a lot of art in them, and I would say.
What do you think of the art?
I like the art very much.
I think
the art is very good.
Yeah, well,
I like very clean line work. I like very, very colorful. Definitely not.
It's very bright.
Not drab or anything like that. Very nice thin lines, characters little rounded, to make them look a lot cuter, but overall I think the art is pretty good in this one.
It's very clean, it's very precise. It almost feels sterile to my mind. It's sort of got that I know it's got a very sort of bishoujo look.
Oh, absolutely.
I like my fantasy art to be, very gritty and dirty and
You're
busy
not going to
and
get
full.
that here.
I'm not getting that here. And I feel like that sort of matches the tone. There's you can't dig into this particular story. Overall, though, I'd say I enjoyed it.
I also would definitely say
I read it. I read it in a day and a half. I was having a lot of fun when I was reading it.
I read the first 4 volumes.
And now I'm done reading it, and I don't know why I did that. And I think I'm going to read more. I don't know. You have them all sitting down there on the shelf.
Yeah, I bought all of them.
So, Pat, you sort of, it might be hard for you to answer this question because you have read ahead. I have not.
I've read ahead.
Where do you think this series is going?
even reading ahead, I'm not 100% sure. I'm going to say Mile is eventually, I think eventually she's going to go back to the old kingdom that she's from.
Right.
And something's going to happen.
So she has a hunter after her, very definitely, and with their new action figures. I love that idea, by the way. Let's capitalize on our popularity and let's make little Ultraman figures of ourselves and sell them for $5 a pop.
Really raking the money, yeah. That was a pretty
best value if you buy all four.
Best value if you buy all. Yeah, that got me best value. $99 best value. How can I say no?
That's not. It's only 2 digits. We could have been 100, but it's 2.
It's only 2.
2 digits.
But yeah, I honestly could not tell you where this is going. Like I said earlier, I think it's just going to be fun little times with the Crimson Vow and possibly the other 3 girls from the Academy.
So here's my big wondering about this is that, the real key to this story is that didn't I say to make my abilities average? So that means there is, if she is, the 0.01% where she is in the exact middle, there is a 49.99% of existence in this world that is more powerful than her. So here's the question.
I don't think that's right, though. Well, I think it's just there's Elder Dragon, half of that is her. And then there is definitely some stuff in the middle, but it is definitely not 50% of this universe.
Right. Well, let's compare this to another, the classic isekai, as controversial as it is Sword Art Online.
Of course.
Kirito in that setting is the most powerful thing, will continue to ad infinitum always be the most powerful thing.
Praise be his name.
Miles, I'm going to just call her Miles because she has 3 names.
Fair enough.
She is not the most powerful thing. No. So here's my big question. Does the story, as it starts to go infinite and we get into volume 10 and onwards, is the average her potential, or was that her starting point? Is there going to be just things in this universe when she gets to a certain area that she just cannot deal with?
You know what? I hope so, because that sounds interesting.
See, that's an interesting story, is that, you start off the most OP piece of shit, overpowered Kirito in the world, as Mary Sue as you get. But eventually you become to the point where, man, you just can't cope.
Yeah.
And, everyone else is a human around you, and humans in fantasy can scale infinitely once they get to a certain point, get a few magic items on them. Will Mile just not be able to keep up when then, as opposed to her being the person leading the Crimson Vow, or the Coven, as I like to refer to the Wonder Trio, because it's just 3 witches who are to themselves and they're off doing their weird witch stuff. Will they then be carrying Miles from that point forward? And it becomes a story more about the relationships she's built and the foundation she's set, more so than just her being as overpowered as humanly possible. So that's where I would like this story to go. So Patty, any closing thoughts?
I liked it. I didn't love it. I liked it quite a bit. Like I said, I bought all the other novels and I'm on volume 4.
You did. It's classic light novel.
They got me.
They got you.
But it is popcorn. But if you're gonna read it, don't go in expecting the greatest thing ever. But if you go in with the right mentality, you're gonna have a fun time. If nothing else. And so, recommended?
That's a hard question.
That is a tough one. I'm gonna give it a recommend.
I would say I wouldn't buy this book, but if you happen to have a roommate who has bought it and you're looking for something to do on a Saturday or Tuesday night, I'd pick it up. I'd read it. This is a great library rental. If you have a good library with a good, or if your school allows you to make recommendations for your library, this would do very well on the shelves. Yep. I recommend this for that.
All right.
So that brings us on to next week.
All right, next week, what are we reading?
Patty, you chose, didn't I say to make my abilities average in the next life? I choose this. This is So I'm a Spider, So What? By Okine Baba. Illustrations by Tsukasa Kiryu. This is going to be next week's novel.
All right, I look forward to reading it.
I've read it already.
Don't tell me.
Here you are. Look, I even gave you a bookmark. It's a mammoth spider. It's a spider book, so we have a spider bookmark.
You actually found a spider card for it.
It's what you have to do. Well, we chose. The cover is white, so I had to choose a white magic card as the bookmark. No, this is very important to me. This is the best value I've ever gotten out of any of my magic cards.
All right. Well.
All right. Well, thank you so much for listening in to our inaugural book club meeting. So I'm a book club. So what?
So, and yeah,
that's the title. The title is just the book every single week. That's how we do this.
That's what's gonna happen.
Yeah.
All right. See you guys.
All right. See ya.